Hello, I'm Clark Crawford, and welcome to Clark Crawford Sports. Today, I'm going to be giving you a Week 18 preview, but before I get into my preview, hit the like button, also leave me your thoughts down below in the comments, and of course, subscribe to my channel. Now, before the Week 18 preview, I must mention that many of the teams who have clinched playoff berths for this upcoming week are choosing to rest their quarterbacks and other key role players in their offenses and defense. So, in your Week 18 preview, which I'll only be going over the games that are most important, can I interest anybody in a washed up Carson Wentz or Blaine Gabbert starting? There's going to be some brutal quarterback matchups. But I'm here to tell you about the most important games of the week, so we don't have to discuss the Carson Wentz's and the Blaine Gabbert games. We'll be discussing the teams that are actually playing their quarterbacks. Also, something to note is this upcoming Monday is known as Black Monday in the NFL, which means there could be some coaches fired. So that's something to watch out for. I may post a video of that later on. If I do, I'll let all of you know. But nonetheless, I'm here to preview the most important games of the week, ones that will not feature mediocre backup quarterback play or third or fourth string quarterback play. On to the games that matter most. A Saturday afternoon showdown between two of the biggest rivals in football features the Pittsburgh Steelers traveling to Baltimore to face the Ravens. Pittsburgh has their season on the line in a must-win game for them, as they obviously have to win, along with they need a ton of help to reach the postseason. The Ravens have nothing left to play for, as they, in my opinion, have shown little interest in this game. I've heard Lamar Jackson, Ricky Sensation, Zay Flowers is sitting, among other players. I mean, hell, the Ravens are so uninterested in this game, they signed Dalvin Cook, having the worst season of his career, showing them how meaningless the game is to them because the Ravens have locked up the number one seed, and like I said, they're planning on sitting Lamar Jackson, Zay Flowers, and other key starters in their Saturday afternoon matchup. Now, the reason we're previewing this game, like I said, the Steelers can still make the playoffs, so it's number one, a rivalry game, and number two, well, the Steelers can still make the playoffs, so it needs to note that if the Ravens do win without their starters, they can kick their division rival Steelers out of the playoffs. Now, on the Steelers side of things, Mason Rudolph and his bright red nose, which somehow he's won 2 games in a row as a Rudolph. I thought he would be with Santa in the North Pole. But hey, apparently he's the starter. Mason Rudolph is the starter on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Can Rudolph and his bright red nose have some January magic and not just some Christmas and holiday luck, keeping the Steelers' slim playoff hopes alive with the win? We'll find out on Saturday afternoon. I'll be tuned in, and we'll see if you are as well. But if you aren't, I'll be tuned in, and I'll give you a recap of Week 18 next week. NFC South is still up for grabs, with Houston, Indianapolis, and Jacksonville battling it out for the division crown. Now, the winner of this primetime matchup between the Texans and the Colts in Indianapolis, the winner of that matchup makes the playoffs as either a wild card or a division winner, with the loser going home and watching the playoffs on the couch. Now, the way the winner of the game can win the division is, well, either the winner of the Texans and Colts, if they win and the Jaguars lose to Tennessee, well, then that's how you win in the division. So the winner needs to win, and they need the Jaguars to lose, which the Jaguars have been choking the second half, most of the second half of the season. So I think there's a good chance the Titans could upset the Jaguars. Well, we'll talk about that later on in the video. Now, everything is at stake in this clash of the AFC South division rivals, as the Texans have a horrific record against the Colts in their history. And also, the Colts have the upper hand from earlier this season, which is why, as of today, the Colts are in the playoffs and the Texans would not be if the playoffs started today, as the Colts beat the Texans 31-20 way back in Week 2 when the Colts starting quarterback was still Anthony Richardson before he was out for the season a few short weeks later. Now, both teams have much improved since their early season battle, and this matchup features, as I mentioned earlier in the season, 2 rookie head coaches going head-to-head. Which one is going to come out on top, headed to the playoffs, and which one is going to send the other one's bags packing? We'll find out. Now also, It was the hopefully much anticipated matchup, as I mentioned, between Anthony Richardson and C.J. Stroud, but we're going to get a matchup of C.J. Stroud versus Gardner Minshew. Still a solid quarterback matchup with Houston having the upper hand, but with that being said, Richardson left the Week 2 game early in the season with an injury, and Gardner Minshew took over and led the Colts to a 31-20 victory, as I mentioned. So C.J. Stroud was outplayed by Gardner Minshew. We'll see if Gardner Minshew can outplay him twice in one season, leading the Colts to the playoffs and the Texans back home watching the playoffs. On to the Lions and Vikings game, which will be played in Detroit. The Vikings are mathematically alive in the playoff hunt, like the Steelers, but they're going to need a ton of help to keep their low percentage playoff chances alive. Nonetheless, the Vikings are still in the playoffs, so we're going to be talking about this game. As for the Vikings side of things, I'm going to be the one to say it. You royally screwed up last week. Now, I'm not saying you would have beaten the Packers, but what possessed head coach Kevin O'Connell to start rookie Jaren Hall, who was an absolute barn burner of a game, and he only played a half, but they got outscored 23-0 in the first half. I don't know what possessed Kevin O'Connell to start Jaren Hall. I mean, I understand Nick Mullins is a turnover-prone quarterback, but he's much better than Jaren Hall. So you got blown out by the Packers, who are one of your division rivals, which is one of the features of this video. But Jaren Hall was so bad, he only played one half of football before being benched for a total of 67 yards in the entire first half, losing a fumble and throwing one of the worst interceptions I've ever seen. Seeing how Hall played, like I said, what possessed Kevin O'Connell to start this man? He was awful. He's not ready to start in the NFL, and frankly, I had never heard of Jaren Hall until a few weeks ago, and I would say I'm a pretty big football fan. Now, maybe I need to do a little more research, but if I hadn't heard of Jaren Hall, well, frankly, I think he's pretty much a nobody right now. So the Vikings quarterback carousel has continued. They've started Kirk Cousins, and ever since Kirk Cousins got hurt, it's been Josh Dobbs, Nick Mullins, now Jaren Hall. I mean, it's a mess in Minnesota. And I think with starting Jaren Hall, Minnesota was trying to lose that game against Green Bay. And my question is, well, if you already lost last week with Jaren Hall, why not just start him again? Because clearly you weren't trying to win last week's game anyways, and why not tank for a better draft pick at this point? Now on to the Lions side of things. Yes, what needs to be addressed is, yes, they did get robbed against the Cowboys. Now, it doesn't guarantee, even though Decker reported, as billboards are telling us in Detroit, if you've seen those photos, go look them up online if you haven't. But Decker reported the Lions got screwed, but it still doesn't guarantee they would have won the game because Dallas would have had about 23 seconds left in the game with a couple timeouts. And also Dallas had been moving the ball pretty well on Detroit's defense all night, and they have the best kicker in the league in 2023. So Dallas could have still gotten in field goal range and won on like a 62-yard field goal. But nonetheless, the Lions did get screwed, but even though the Lions lost, they still have a chance at the 2 seed if Dallas loses to Washington, which is unlikely, and Detroit beats the Vikings on Sunday. But that's another discussion for another day, the whole royally screwing the Lions. But hey, Lions, you're still in a great spot. You're still NFC North Division champs, and you're still going to make the playoffs. So let's win this game against the Vikings and look back on a positive 12-win season, getting ready for the playoffs. You can't change history, so Lions fans, look forward to the positive. You're at least going to have one home playoff game, pack that stadium, and go win some games. I'm not a Lions fan, but I'm kind of on the Lions bandwagon. I want to see them succeed. I really love Dan Campbell as a coach, and Amon-Ra St. Brown was one of my fantasy guys. He's on one of my dynasty fantasy teams, and I want to see the Lions succeed, and Amon-Ra St. Brown to keep kicking everyone's tails. Now, for the other matchup in the AFC South is between Jacksonville and Tennessee. Can the Titans play spoiler in this one, causing the Jaguars, who are AFC South heavy favorites coming into the year, lose the division on the final week of the regular season? The Jaguars were expected to run away with the division for the most part, but that has not been the case due to losing 4 out of their last 5. The Jaguars are coming off a shutout win last week with their backup quarterback C.J. Beathard starting as Travis Etienne ran for 2 touchdowns. Well, let's be real. They played the Carolina Panthers, who are clearly the worst team in the NFL this year. Nothing to celebrate there for Jaguar fans other than you got back in the win column, which is obviously important, but you beat the worst team in the NFL. That's not too exciting considering how the last month and a half of football has gone for you. Now, the Jaguar fans need to be more concerned of who do you start at quarterback this week. It has not become official that Trevor Lawrence is going to start, but C.J. Beathard played well, even though he didn't throw a whole lot of passes. But as I got to ask you, Jaguar fans, if any of you are watching, are you confident in Trevor Lawrence right now? Number one, he's been banged up a ton. He's had a concussion, a knee injury, an ankle injury, you name it. He's had pretty much every injury in the book that doesn't cause you to miss the whole season the last about 2 months. And also, on top of his injury problems, Trevor Lawrence has been a huge disappointment this year. In a year being where the number 1 overall pick comes with high expectations to this point in his career, and he's come nowhere close to those expectations. When you look at the numbers, Trevor Lawrence has been a modest, moderate, mediocre number 1 pick as a quarterback, the most important position in football. So if you're Jaguar fans, I think, in my opinion, even though I'm not a Jaguar fan, I think you should be rooting for C.J. Beathard to start. I think it gives you a better chance to win, even though you're playing a better team in Tennessee. Now, I think the Jaguars have a good chance to win this game, but like I said, I think their odds will be even better. I think you need to rest Trevor Lawrence and get him healthy for the playoffs. I think C.J. Beathard is more than capable of winning this game. He's not a great quarterback. Regardless, I think Beathard, at least this week, gives you a better chance to win. My prediction, the Titans keep the game close, but fall short of an upset. Continuing the trend of the division rivals, because, everyone in Week 18 plays division opponents. Another division rival game determines the NFC South, or determines the 2 games in the NFC South. We start with the Falcons and Saints. The winner of this game wins the division with the win in this game and a Buccaneers loss. First things first, between these two, you have to win the game and then hope Tampa Bay loses to the worst team in football, which will come next in a matchup of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Carolina Panthers. Now, Falcons coming into this game, losers of 3 of their last 4 games. Atlanta has had bad coaching along with bad quarterback play all season. You can tell me, Atlanta fans, your Bijan Robinson tiers, Tyler Algier, or Cordell Patterson stealing his touchdowns. That's why I didn't draft Bijan in fantasy, because I don't trust the coaching. And I've been proven right on that one. Now, for the Saints, you signed quarterback Derek Carr and have a .500 record. Well, who could have seen that coming? Because New Orleans, you massively overpaid for an average quarterback at best. I'm just happy I'm not a Saints fan and have to deal with Derek Carr as my quarterback, because I'd be pulling my hair out as I have a good head of hair on my head. Now, as for the game, this is a game between 2 teams who need a win, and what I'm watching for most in this game is actually who loses this game, because I think the losing coach, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, is primed for Black Monday and to be a coach that is fired, because as the owner of these teams, who should probably be fired too for hiring these coaches, and I don't think either owner is very good, I think both teams need to change the scenery. They have mediocre at best coaching, and honestly, both coaches suck. So, if you ask me, I think the loser of the game, and heck, even the winner of the game's coach, needs to be fired. So that brings me along to the other NFC South matchup, as I mentioned in the other game preview. All Tampa Bay has to do is win, and they clinch the division. Now, all Tampa Bay had to do last week was win against the Saints, but they failed to do so because Tampa Bay could already be NFC South division champs. Good news for the Buccaneers, you played Carolina. You beat them early in December. It was an ugly game, but you did beat them. And all you have to do is beat them again, and you claim the NFC South title. It's that simple. I am all for chaos in this scenario, but I want the best team to win the division, which is Tampa Bay, and I want Tampa Bay in the postseason to give us better postseason matchups. Now, as for the Buccaneers, They had 4 turnovers a week ago, so I think if you just don't turn the ball over 4 times against the worst team in football, you should cruise to like last season. If the Packers win their Week 18 game, they make the postseason. Now, last year, they failed to beat Detroit in the final game of the year and missed out on the postseason, which within a few months later, they went on to trade Aaron Rodgers, ending his tenure in Green Bay. All Jordan Love has to do is beat the Chicago Bears to clinch a playoff spot, which Aaron Rodgers failed to beat the Detroit Lions. And Aaron Rodgers is a future Hall of Famer to get you in the playoffs, and he failed to do so. Now, good news for the Packers, they've been hot as of late. Jordan Love has been a top 5 quarterback since right around Thanksgiving when he put on a show against the Detroit Lions on the road and upsetting the Lions in Detroit in the Thanksgiving battle. Now, Chicago has the number 1 pick locked up with the trade they made before last season's draft with the Carolina Panthers. They robbed the Panthers. Panthers get Bryce Young, but Chicago got all these assets, and Chicago has gone from a 3-win team this year, and now they have 7 wins. So Chicago is improving. Now the question is Justin Fields your long-term starter? That's something Chicago needs to figure out. Now, as I mentioned, Chicago has the number 1 pick locked up with their trade they made with Carolina. So with Chicago having that pick locked up because they own Carolina's picks, Chicago still has a lot to play for here. Chicago has an interesting way to play this game. You can either sit some of your players and improve your other draft pick, which is probably going to be right around number 10, and maybe improve it to number 9 or 8, or you can go and try to spoil the Packers season. Obviously, I think the Bears will try and go and spoil the Packers season. Now, the Packers have had an interesting season, as most of their fans predicted this to be a rebuilding year, but it's turned out to be the opposite, as they've been a nice surprise in the NFL. With that being said, I have Green Bay winning this game and moving on to the playoffs. The last preview game of the week I want to mention is a clash between the Buffalo Bills and the Miami Dolphins. Winner of this game wins the AFC East on Sunday Night Football. If Buffalo wins, obviously they win the division, but if they lose on Sunday night, the outcome of the other games determines the Bills' playoff lives. Now, the Bills can either be the 2 seed with the win, a 6 seed with the loss, a 7 seed with the loss, or entirely out of the playoffs, depending on the other outcomes of the games. Now, other than the Ravens, Buffalo is arguably the hottest team in the league. Bills come into this game winners of 4 straight, and they've completely flipped their season around since firing their offensive coordinator about 8-9 weeks ago. Now, for the Dolphins side of things, they've suffered a ton of injuries lately. They seem to be scuffling. I mean, heck, they lost to Tennessee a few weeks ago when they led by 13 with 4 minutes left in the game. Also, the Dolphins have lost Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb, their best 2 pass rushers, both having good seasons. Raheem Mostert and Jalen Waddle did not play last week, as both are questionable at best to play this week, along with Tyreek Hill and Tua Tagovailoa nursing injuries, which those 2 are expected to play. Mostert and Waddle, I think, are highly questionable at best. Miami's at home, but they're playing sloppy football right now over the past month, and along with getting blown out against Baltimore last week, I get the feeling that Josh Allen is possibly going to torch the Dolphins' defense, and this could be another brutal game for Miami. I like Buffalo, led by Josh Allen in this game, who are playing much better football as of late. I think it's safe to say, as I mentioned, firing the offensive coordinator was the right move, as they've unleashed James Cook as of late, and he's been really good. Now, the one downside has been Stephon Diggs has disappeared from their offense. He might be on a milk carton, and if you see Stephon Diggs missing on the side of a milk carton or a milk jug, return him to the Buffalo Bills offense, because who knows what happened to Stephon Diggs, because he's been absent for about the last 8 weeks in Buffalo's offense. We will see what kind of fight Miami puts up at home against Buffalo. I believe Buffalo steals the division title away from Miami, as all they had to do a couple weeks ago, now that we know the outcome of these other games, was beat Tennessee when they had a big lead late in the game, and Miami would have already clinched the division crown. So In the final game of the regular season, I have Buffalo winning, Buffalo stealing the division crown, as it'll end the NFL regular season of 2023. I'll wrap up my Week 18 preview. Thank you all for watching, and if you aren't already, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you all in my next video.